Hey there, Drowsy Historian here. Tonight, it's the late 1940s in post-war Japan, a nation rebuilding from ashes, powered by exhaustion and quiet desperation. You're a factory worker on the verge of collapse from the long hours, so you decide to try a pill called Philipon, a legal form of methamphetamine that promises focus, stamina, and relief. For a while, it works wonders, but you'll soon find out it comes with a cost. Before we start, do me one small favour. Tell me where you're listening from and what time it is there. If you'd prefer these stories without ads, you can join the Patreon. It's linked in the description. And if you want the ultimate immersive experience, consider using a pair of wireless earbuds. They're comfortable, discreet, and designed so you can wear them even while sleeping. I've linked my favourite pair plus other sleep tools in the description. Now, lie back, get comfortable. Let's begin. The bell of the boarding house rings before the sun has risen. You wake to the sound of men rising, a rustle of blankets and breath in the dim half-light. The air is thick with the smell of damp cloth, hair oil, and the faint smoke of a neighbour's early cigarette. Someone coughs behind the sliding door, and the floorboards creak as weight shifts from futon to bare feet. You fold your bedding with the practiced neatness of duty, each corner pressed tight. Around you, other men move in rhythm, a quiet choreography born from repetition. A kettle hisses in the communal corridor. Rice balls, wrapped in wax paper, appear from tin boxes. The whisper of toothbrushes in use mixes with the low murmur of weather guesses and work complaints. Outside, the alley smells of yesterday's rain and coal dust. The boarding house door sticks slightly before it opens, and you step into the early chill. The street is a narrow river of men in identical caps, each carrying a metal lunch tin, each walking at the same pace. The tram rattles past, its windows fogged. A woman sweeps her shop front, bowing briefly as you pass. Somewhere a radio hums through static, broadcasting the same patriotic tune from before the war, only slower now, less certain. The city is rebuilding itself brick by brick, beam by beam, breath by breath. The ruins are not gone, only hidden beneath new scaffolds and the smell of fresh mortar. You pass the shell of a building, still pocked by shrapnel, its upper floors gone. You arrive at the factory gates with the others, a flood of bodies funneling through the turnstile. The guard nods, stamping time cards with a bored rhythm. Inside, the air is warm and oily, thick with steam from the machine presses. Overhead lights buzz faintly, casting a hard white glare that never changes. You place your tin on the shelf, hang your jacket on the same nail you've used for months, and tie your sleeves up above the wrist. The motion is automatic, almost graceful. The whistle blows, a sound like steel itself learning to breathe. You take your place along the conveyor, where metal components clatter forward, one after another, identical, demanding. Your task is small, precise alignment of two parts before they are carried away. It requires no thought, only steadiness. The rhythm of the belt becomes the rhythm of your body. You count seconds without realizing it. The foreman walks the aisle with a clipboard, his shoes leaving faint prints in the dust. He nods to those who keep pace, frowns at those who falter. You are neither praised nor scolded. You are simply part of the motion. Hours pass without distinction. The world contracts to sound and heat. The thud of the press, the hiss of air valves, the rattle of bolts. Conversation is scarce. Voices must fight the noise, and most have given up trying. The few that persist are brief. Requests for tools, warnings about slippage, half-hearted jokes shouted into the din. You hear them, but only as texture. Your mind drifts to the rhythm of the machines. And in that rhythm, thought feels unnecessary. When the whistle marks the short break, you straighten your back and flex your fingers, surprised by the tremor there. The veins stand out along your wrist, pulsing faintly. You glance around and see the same exhaustion etched into every face. Young men already old, shoulders sagging beneath uniforms that smell of iron and soap. Some light cigarettes, others drink tea from dented thermos flasks. A few simply close their eyes where they stand, heads lowered as if in prayer. You eat slowly, one rice ball at a time, though the food feels heavy and tasteless. The air tastes of oil and steam. Across from you, someone is laughing at nothing, a dry laugh that ends too quickly. Another worker rubs his neck, muttering about the next shipment. Everyone is tired, but no one says the word. Fatigue is not a condition here. It is the price of belonging. When the bell rings again, you return to your station. The noise resumes instantly, as though the factory has been holding its breath. The belt begins to move, your hands follow. A spark jumps from a loose wire somewhere down the line, and the flash briefly illuminates the rows of bent heads, each identical in posture and purpose. You wonder how long the human body can move like this before it begins to forget it is human. Outside, daylight has begun to seep through the high windows, but it brings no warmth. The light is grey and indifferent, filtered through the smoke of nearby chimneys. You can almost see the particles hanging in the air, ash metal filings, the ghosts of a burnt city. You think of the countryside, where your family still lives, where mornings smell of earth instead of iron. But the thought passes, there is work to do. There is always work to do. Your vision narrows as the hours drag on. The edges of the room blur, the sound merges into one long mechanical pulse. The line speeds up, just slightly, enough to demand more precision from hands that already ache. The foreman's voice cuts through the roar, brief commands, sharp corrections. You nod without looking up. The tremor in your hands worsens, and you press your palms together between tasks to steady them. The gesture feels like apology. By the time the afternoon whistle blows, your shoulders burn, your throat tastes of dust, and your head hums faintly in time with the machinery. The men file out for another break, some wiping their faces with towels, others staring blankly at the floor. You follow, feet heavy, lungs filled with the scent of oil and metal filings. The final whistle comes, long and low. The machines slow, groaning as they release their heat. The air thickens with silence, strange and heavy, after so many hours of noise. You remove your gloves, the fingertips stain black. Around you, men stretch, yawn, cough. The day's work has ended, but tomorrow's is already forming in their minds. You know the feeling well, the awareness that rest is only an intermission, not a reprieve. You collect your lunch tin and step back onto the floor for inspection. The foreman's eyes sweep over the line, pausing on no one in particular. He gives a short nod, satisfied. The gesture carries no warmth. You wipe your hands on a rag, slip the tin under your arm, and move toward the exit. As the others file out, the factory's hum lingers like an echo. You pause at your station one last time, fingertips brushing the cool metal of the conveyor. The tremor in your hand returns, subtle but insistent. You flex your fingers, breathe once, and look up toward the foreman's raised voice, cutting through the din. The words are indistinct, swallowed by the machinery. The noise swells, the whistle joins, and the two become one sound. The endless rhythm of work continuing without you. The next day unfolds exactly the same. You wake up feeling like you barely slept and head to work. At the factory gate, the same guard stamps the same cards. The same whistle sounds. The same noise swallows all thought. You move through the motions like a metronome wound too tight. The fatigue of yesterday has not faded. It has simply learned to live inside you. Each turn of the wrench feels heavier than the last. You blink against the white glare and feel your hands hesitate at the line, the rhythm slipping for just an instant. The foreman's eyes catch yours, and you correct the motion quickly. There is no patience for tiredness here. When the short morning break comes, you sit on the same bench near the wall, shoulders slumped, fingers pressed to your temples. The tea in your tin cup tastes weak. Around you, the others talk quietly. About quotas, about pay, about rumours that new machinery is coming from Osaka. You hear none of it clearly. The sound of the presses still echoes in your ears, dull and constant, like a heartbeat that refuses to rest. Your co-worker, Sato, joins you. He looks less tired than usual. His sleeves are rolled to the elbow, exposing a web of scars and the edge of a faded tattoo. He sits, exhales smoke, and glances sideways at you. "You look like hell," he says, without cruelty. Too much thinking, not enough efficiency. He taps the side of his lunch tin, and when you look closer, you see a small paper packet resting beside it. Neatly folded, slightly creased. He tears it open with his thumb and shakes a white tablet into his palm. "Philippon," he says casually. "You've heard of it, right? They used it during the war. For pilots. For soldiers. Now they make it for workers like us. Helps you keep the line." The way he says it makes it sound like a civic duty, a contribution. He drops his own tablet into a cup of tea, where it floats, dissolving in slow spirals. "Try it," he says. "First one's free. Company doesn't mind." You stare at the envelope he offers you. The paper is thin and rough against your fingers. Inside lies a single tablet, smaller than you expected, smooth, white, and unremarkable. It smells faintly of antiseptic, like the infirmary after inspection day. You roll it between your fingertips, half expecting to feel a pulse in it. Sato grins faintly. "Don't think too much. It's just medicine," he says. "Everyone takes it, even the foreman." You glance around and he's right. Others are doing the same, popping tablets in their mouths between sips of tea, swallowing without a word. The act carries no secrecy, no shame. It belongs to the same category as washing your hands or buttoning your uniform. You lift the cup, the tablet balanced on your tongue, and swallow. The taste surprises you. Chalky at first, then bitter, leaving a metallic echo in your throat that tea cannot erase. Sato laughs quietly. "You'll get used to it. Give it 5 minutes, you'll see." At first, nothing changes. You sit there, aware only of the rhythmic ticking of a clock somewhere above the door. The whistle of steam pipes hisses faintly through the walls. Then slowly, the world begins to sharpen. The haze that clung to your vision since dawn seems to lift. The air feels cooler, cleaner. The light from the window turns clear and geometric, cutting through the dust like glass. Your pulse steadies. The ache in your shoulders recedes, not gone, but muted, as though someone has turned down the volume of pain. The tired heaviness in your limbs loosens. Your thoughts, which moments ago wandered in a sluggish fog, now align with the rhythm of the factory itself. You look down at your hands. They no longer tremble. The motion of flexing them feels smooth, deliberate. You imagine you could work twice as long without stopping, maybe even 3 times. Sato watches you and nods knowingly. "See? Feels like waking up," he says. "That's how it's supposed to feel." Around you, the men begin to rise. The break is ending. Someone laughs a little too loudly at a joke you missed. Another slaps Sato on the back and says something about another shipment coming in by evening. Their voices seem brighter now, less burdened. You finish your tea, even the bitter dregs, and stand. The warmth of the liquid spreads through your chest, like a small internal fire. For the first time in months, you do not dread the next shift. The whistle blows again, long and sharp. You file back to the line with the others, shoulders squared, lungs drawing the humid air without complaint. The machines are already beginning to turn, their noise swelling into a steady rhythm that no longer feels oppressive, but oddly inviting. You take your position, the metal cool beneath your fingertips, and when the belt begins to move, your hands follow with unthinking precision. The foreman walks past, glancing at you briefly. You meet his eye for the first time in weeks. and he nods with faint approval. You return to your task, heartbeat in sync with the clatter and hiss. The noise becomes your guide, the tempo of your body. The work feels easier, almost clean. The factory seems brighter, more alive. You tell yourself this is what discipline feels like, the alignment of will and duty, machine and man. The minutes stretch and fold without effort. You move faster than before, your breath even, your vision narrow and focused. The blur of fatigue that used to hang at the edge of every hour has vanished. You don't notice the sweat beading on your forehead or the faint tremor in your jaw. You don't feel hungry. You feel efficient. Several days pass, though it's hard to say how many. Time feels smoother now, less jagged. Each morning begins the same. The pale light through the boarding house shutters, the quiet shuffle of men dressing, the clatter of lunch tins. You wash your face, button your uniform, and unfold the small brown packet on the table. One tablet, white and chalky, sits waiting in your palm. You take it with a sip of water before breakfast, though you rarely bother eating anymore. The taste is familiar now. Bitter, medicinal, oddly clean. Within minutes, the fog lifts, and the day begins in perfect order. You bought your own supply after that first day. The corner pharmacy near the tram line sells it openly, displayed behind glass beside aspirin and cough syrup. The clerk barely looks up when you ask for it, wrapping the tin in brown paper as if it were soap. The label reads Philipon for stamina and efficiency. The letters are neat and modern, printed in reassuring blue. You remember thinking it must be safe if they sell it that way, if they advertise it beside vitamins. At the factory, everything feels sharper. The heat from the presses, the smell of oil, even the shouts of the foreman fall into rhythm, part of an invisible pattern you now understand. The machines that once seemed deafening now hum like instruments, precise and obedient. Your hands move faster without strain, as though the body has finally agreed to the pace the world demands. You complete your section's quota early each day, often staying after to help repair equipment or sort spare parts. The foreman nods when he passes, a small sign of approval that lands deeper than it should. You no longer dread the hours. The line moves, the parts align, and fatigue. That old companion has retreated somewhere distant. Even when the belt speeds up, you match it effortlessly. You barely notice when the whistle sounds for brakes. You pour tea because it's expected, not because you need it. The warmth in your chest feels constant now, as steady as breath. Around you, others have changed as well. The benches during rest periods are quieter. There are fewer yawns, fewer complaints about hours or quotas. Some men take tablets, openly, others discreetly. No one comments. The factory runs smoother than ever, and the supervisors say production has nearly doubled. They attribute it to discipline, patriotism, the spirit of rebuilding. You know better, but you don't correct them. You've stopped writing home. There doesn't seem much to say. The days are all the same, not unpleasant, just efficient. You send money when you remember, enough to keep things proper. The idea of visiting someday feels abstract, like something belonging to another person's life. The city has swallowed you quietly. One evening after a long shift, Sato sits beside you in the locker room, unwrapping his cigarettes. He looks at you and grins. "You've found your rhythm," he says. "Doesn't it make the days shorter?" You nod, lighting your own cigarette. The smoke feels unnecessary, more ritual than comfort. "It helps, you say." He laughs. "It's not help," he answers. "It's progress." Then he stands and leaves without looking back. At night, you lie awake in your narrow bed, eyes open in the dark. You no longer count the hours of sleep. They feel irrelevant. Your body hums faintly, the pulse steady and fast. You stare at the ceiling and think about tomorrow's shift. The sound of the presses, the rhythm of the line, the way the metal slides together in your hands. The thought is not anxious or tiring. It feels like purpose. By midweek, the difference is visible. Your movements have become economical, almost graceful. You no longer fumble tools or misalign bolts. The foreman calls you by name now, something he never did before. Once, he tells you that if the others worked like you, the factory would finish a week ahead of schedule. You bow slightly, unsure what to say. The compliment feels deserved, but hollow, like praise for breathing correctly. Your appetite has nearly disappeared. You still bring your lunch out of habit, but you leave it untouched. The rice hardens in its tin while you work, and you throw it away before heading home. Even the smell of food seems heavy, clumsy. Tea is enough, though even that has begun to taste dull. The only flavour that remains vivid is the faint bitterness of the morning tablet. On the tram ride home, the city glows faintly through the haze. Cranes over new buildings, electric signs advertising tonics and sweets. You notice a new poster pasted near the door. A smiling factory worker, hand raised to the rising sun. Beneath him, a variation of the words from the pill label, Pilipon, for a nation in motion. The slogan makes you smile. You imagine the whole city moving at your pace, clear and tireless, the sound of its engines blending into a single note. By Thursday, the week feels endless, but frictionless. You wake before the alarm, take your tablet, dress, and go. The tram always arrives on time. The foreman's voice no longer grates. The factory feels almost peaceful now, a place of pure function. You work through the breaks without realising it until the bell rings for quitting time. When you finally stop, you feel a kind of pleasant emptiness, as if something inside has been neatly used up. That evening, the pay clerk hands out wages one by one. You stand in line with the others, the air thick with oil and sweat. When you open your envelope, the bills look cleaner than usual, crisp and warm. The sum is larger than you expected, a small bonus for overtime. You smile faintly and fold the money into your pocket. The paper rustles softly beside the folded packet of tablets. Outside, the street vendors are already lighting their lamps. Smoke drifts from the food stalls, carrying the smell of grilled fish and soy. You pause near one but move on quickly, the scent too rich, almost nauseating. Instead, you buy another small tin of Philipon from the pharmacy, the same one you stopped at before. The clerk recognises you and doesn't bother with small talk. The transaction takes seconds. A few coins, a polite bow, a wrapped package. You slip it into your jacket and continue down the street. The tram is crowded but quiet, the air thick with factory sweat and tobacco. You lean against the door, watching the city pass. The glow of workshops, the scaffolds stretching toward the night sky, the advertisements promising renewal. Everything hums with motion. You tell yourself this is what progress feels like. Steady, unstoppable, precise. Evening settles over the boarding house like a lid lowered gently into place. You return with the others from the factory, your clothes still warm with the day's air, the smell of oil and metal following you inside. The hallway is narrow and humid, lined with rows of shoes and low voices. Someone coughs behind a door, someone else hums tunelessly as he hangs his coat. The sound of a kettle starting to boil in the communal kitchen moves through the walls like a faint pulse. Your pay envelope goes beneath your pillow, as it always does, a small ritual that feels safer than prayer. Around you, men move through the same steps without speaking, shirts unbuttoned, towels wrung out, boots lined neatly along the wall. The day's noise has not vanished. It has only been dulled to a steady undertone that never fully stops. The boarding house, like the factory, runs on rhythm. The dormitory room is filled with soft light from a single bulb strung low above the tatami. Futons are laid in tidy rows, edges overlapping like tiles. The air smells of sweat, soap, and burnt tobacco. A few men sit cross-legged, sipping tea from dented cups. Others roll cigarettes from the same shared tin, passing matches without looking up. Conversation drifts and fades, slow as smoke, It takes effort to laugh now, and even that sounds tired. Philipon circulates easily, folded in small paper packets that pass from hand to hand beside the kettle. Someone breaks a tablet in half and drops it into tea, stirring until the chalk dissolves. Another swallows his dry, grimacing at the taste. You take one too, though you no longer think of it as indulgence. It's practical, a tool to stretch the night thinner, to make morning less heavy. The exchange is quiet and unremarkable, like the trade of cigarettes or buttons. No one hides what they're doing because no one feels the need to. The talk is ordinary, circular, stripped of energy. Someone mentions that production quotas will increase again next month. Another claims that new machinery is coming from Osaka and that it will make half the floor redundant. The man nearest the door says it won't matter. There will always be more work somewhere. The others nod without much thought. A few chuckle when someone jokes that even the machines will need Philipon soon, but the laughter doesn't hold. It falls apart unfinished. The kettle whistles, thin and weary. A man stands to refill it, his steps careful not to disturb the mats. He lifts it from the brazier with a towel wrapped around his hand, pours the water, and returns to his futon without a word. You pour your own cup, the steam rising like breath in winter. The tea tastes faintly of metal, like everything else. You take out a sheet of paper and begin your letter home. The pencil moves easily at first. You write that the factory is steady, that the work suits you, that the city is improving each week. You lie the way everyone lies, through omission, not invention. You don't mention the tablets or the long hours or the silence that fills you after the whistle blows. You add 2 folded bills and say you'll write again soon, though you already know you won't. The letter will travel farther than you ever will again. Across the room, a man mends his trousers, the thread grey against darker cloth. Another rubs his neck and mutters about a noise in his ears that won't go away. Someone has a radio, its voice barely audible. A woman reading news about recovery, reconstruction, progress. The words pass through the room like a weather report, pleasant and unreal. For a moment, the music that follows almost drowns out the factory, still echoing in your head. Almost. You look around at the faces illuminated by the low bulb. Everyone seems narrower than when you first arrived. Sharper lines at the jaw, hollows at the temples. Fatigue has refined them into something efficient. No one remarks on the changes. Bodies are expected to adapt. It's part of the job, like knowing when to keep pace or when to stand aside. The factory shapes men as surely as the machines shape metal. A younger worker, no more than 20, sits near the wall with his knees drawn up, staring at his hands. His lips move as if rehearsing something he never intends to say aloud. Another man tosses him a cigarette, and he catches it without surprise, lights it, and exhales toward the ceiling. The smoke drifts upward, colliding with the steam from the kettle and the faint dust stirred by the fan. You watch the layers merge until they become indistinguishable, a single grey veil that never quite dissipates. When the tea runs out, the talk does too. The radio fades into static and is turned off. Men spread their bedding, one after another, the sound of fabric on tatami soft but insistent. Someone offers a final good night that no one answers. The light hums, steady and fragile. You lie down, hands folded loosely on your chest, and listen to the others settle. The room smells of sweat and starch and the faint chemical sweetness that clings to your own breath. You think briefly of home, of green fields after rain, of your mother's hands pressing rice into a ball, of the sound of night insects outside an open window. The memory feels like something rehearsed too often, worn smooth and small. You turn your head away from it. The present has become simpler, easier to understand. You work, you return, you rest. The world beyond the factory and the dormitory has shrunk to a thin, manageable shape. The man nearest the door snores softly. Another shifts on his mat, muttering in his sleep. Someone else gets up to use the washroom, the floor creaking beneath his feet, then returns and lies down again. The repetition of these small movements feels predictable, almost comforting. You can sense each body in the dark by sound, a breath, a turn, the rustle of cloth. You are all in step even here, bound together by fatigue and the faint hum still running in your veins. You close your eyes expecting sleep, but it doesn't come. The tablet steadies you, keeps the pulse at an even tempo that refuses to slow. The silence of the room grows thicker, pressing softly against your ears. You open your eyes again and stare upward, though there's nothing to see but the faint seam where the ceiling meets the wall. The air feels heavier now, as though the night itself has weight. You turn on your side and try to focus on breathing, but even that feels mechanical. In, out, steady, precise. The body obeys, but the mind will not release its hold. You think of the machines cooling at the factory, of belts that never quite stop spinning, of oil thickening on metal. The rhythm persists behind your ribs, faithful as labour. A faint tremor moves through your hands when you flex them. You press them flat against the futon until it passes. Across the room, someone mutters, then falls quiet again. The kettle clicks once as it cools. The clock in the corridor ticks away a silence that no one inside seems able to reach. The bulb flickers once, twice, then steadies before giving out. The dark settles easily. You keep your eyes open because closing them makes no difference. You wait, eyes fixed on nothing, heartbeat too steady to let you sleep. The next week begins without ceremony, the same way all weeks do. The tram's bell cuts through the grey dawn, and you file through the gates with the same crowd, each man carrying the same weight of hours ahead. The city still smells faintly of coal and rain. The air at the factory gate feels almost familiar now, like entering a place that belongs to your body as much as it does to your labour. You move through the motions without thinking, coat hung, sleeves rolled, gloves pulled tight, and the day begins in rhythm. You take your tablet, as you always do, before the first whistle. You wait for the rush of clarity, for that moment when the noise sharpens and everything comes into focus. It arrives, but not as bright as before. The edges feel dulled, the clarity thinner, as though the world has already been seen too many times. You tell yourself the feeling will strengthen once the shift begins. The line moves quickly. Your hands follow the belt with perfect precision. The same steady repetition that once felt like triumph. Yet something small is missing, a spark you can't name. You notice the drag in your limbs returning before the day's halfway mark. The parts blur slightly, their shapes too similar, their sound too constant. You swallow and feel the dryness in your throat. When the bell rings for the short break, you sit without appetite, staring at your tea as the steam curls away. You take another tablet. You don't announce it, don't justify it, you simply do it. It feels less like indulgence than adjustment, a correction made to keep pace. The second one goes down easily. The chalkiness already familiar. You finish your tea, lean back, and wait. The warmth returns in minutes, though it's not the same warmth as before. This one feels hollow, more like absence than energy, a clarity so sharp it begins to cut. The chatter of men around you fades to a low hum. Their voices seem far away, as though you're hearing them through glass. When the whistle sounds, you rise with them, but the motion feels delayed, as if your body obeys after your mind. Back at the line, you work faster than ever. The machines seem louder, the presses heavier, the rhythm too perfect to interrupt. Your eyes trace each piece automatically. Your body feels detached, capable, but distant, the movements belonging to muscle memory more than to you. Time stretches oddly. The hours pass both quickly and not at all. The foreman stops by your station in the afternoon, clipboard in hand. He watches you work for a long moment before nodding once. "You've found your discipline," he says. The praise sounds almost solemn, like a blessing. You bow slightly, careful not to break rhythm. He walks on, satisfied. You hear his shoes receding down the aisle, but the sound doesn't register as real. You're too busy concentrating on nothing. The steady hum, the gleam of metal, the faint vibration in your fingertips that refuses to stop. By evening, your jaw aches. You realise you've been clenching it for hours without noticing. You try to stretch it open, but the hinge catches. Your hands feel too steady, the steadiness unnatural. It's not control anymore. It's something closer to paralysis disguised as mastery. You mistake it for calm. The next morning, you wake early again after barely sleeping, but your chest feels heavy. The others in the dormitory move sluggishly, voices flat. You join them in silence, washing your face with cold water that doesn't bite the way it should. When you dress, your sleeves hang slightly looser on your wrists. You notice it, but don't think about why. You take another tablet before the tram, though you hesitate first, wondering if the second one yesterday was too much. The thought is small and quickly dismissed. The dose feels like arithmetic now. 1 if the day is light, 2 if the day is long. You swallow, wince at the bitterness, and step outside. At work, everything feels slightly off, like a machine running 1 gear too fast. You can sense the pattern but no longer hear it. The presses seem to move before you do, forcing your body to catch up. The light feels too bright, the air too warm. A man drops a wrench nearby, and the sound startles you more than it should. You pretend not to notice, bending deeper over your station. Hours slide past without distinction. The body knows what to do, even if the mind has stopped keeping track. You feel yourself completing tasks with precision, but there's no satisfaction now, only continuation. The line runs, the belt hums, the foreman paces. The entire floor feels submerged, each sound muffled by the next. You begin to see motion everywhere, fingers twitching, heads nodding, feet tapping in quiet unison. The entire factory beats like one enormous heart, mechanical and steady, and you are one of its chambers. During the break, you drink water instead of tea. The taste of metal lingers no matter what you do. Someone passes a packet across the table, but you wave it away, not out of refusal, but because you already have enough. You realise then that your hands have stopped shaking, but the stillness feels wrong. Too exact, too rehearsed. You rub your fingers together just to prove to yourself they still belong to you. The sensation barely registers. Later, as you tighten a bolt on one of the machines, you catch the faint smell of oil and realise how familiar it has become, how constant. The scent follows you everywhere now, in your hair, your clothes, even the skin of your hands. It's the same smell that clings to the walls of the boarding house and the folds of your pillow. You can't remember when it began. You only know that without it, the air might feel too empty. When the final whistle blows, you step back from the line and stretch your neck, hearing the small crack of bone. The sound is oddly satisfying. The men around you are slow to move, each one locked in the same quiet trance. The foreman calls for the lights to be shut off row by row, and darkness spreads across the floor in stages, the machines going quiet, like animals trained to sleep. In the washroom, the mirror fogs from the steam of the tap. You lean closer, wiping a circle clear with your sleeve. The face that looks back feels both familiar and foreign. The cheeks are hollowed now, the skin pale under the fluorescent light. Your pupils look too wide, black and depthless, swallowing the iris. You tilt your head and notice how thin your neck appears, how the collar sits too loosely around it. The jaw that felt strong a week ago is sharp now, the bones showing through. You stare until the fog creeps back over the glass, softening the reflection into something you can almost believe again. You dry your hands, turn off the light, and step out into the hallway. The air smells faintly of soap and iron. Your steps echo as you walk, careful, measured. You tell yourself you're just tired, that the tablets are still working, that control and calm are the same thing. The days begin to blend, as though someone has scraped away the lines that used to divide them. The tram still comes at the same hour, the whistle still cuts the air in the same place, but time itself feels softer, like wet clay pressed between your fingers. You tell yourself this is what efficiency feels like, seamless, smooth, uninterrupted. The mornings arrive without anticipation, the nights close without relief. You no longer need to wake early, your body simply does. The letter home lies half finished in the drawer beside your bed, written weeks ago. Each night you mean to finish it, but the pencil feels heavy and the words sound false. You tell yourself you'll write next Sunday, when the shift ends early. But Sunday passes, as they all do, unnoticed until it's gone. When you finally remember, you decide it's better not to write at all than to repeat the same things you've already said. The envelope remains on the small table by the window, its edges curling, a fine layer of dust settling on its fold. The tablets have become part of your routine. They rest in a row of paper packets stacked neatly in the drawer, tucked between coins and cigarettes. You no longer think of them as medicine or indulgence. They are maintenance. You ration them with care, the way a farmer might count seed, enough for each day, with a few in reserve for difficult weeks. You never take more than necessary, though lately necessity seems to grow. You tell yourself this is discipline. The boarding house is quieter now, or maybe you've stopped listening. Conversations fade before they reach your corner of the room. The men still share cigarettes, still exchange small jokes before bed, but the warmth has drained from their voices. You don't notice until one evening, when someone asks you about home, and you hesitate too long before answering. They're fine, you say at last. Work is steady. The words come out automatic, like the stamping of a seal. The man nods, satisfied, and turns away. You stop going to prayer. The service near the river once gave you a kind of rhythm, something softer to mark the week's end, but now it feels distant. The walk there is long, and by the time Sunday arrives, the idea of sitting still in a crowded room feels almost unbearable. You tell yourself that work is its own form of devotion, that endurance counts for faith. The thought soothes you more than any hymn ever did. The city around you has quickened. Construction cranes sweep across the skyline like the arms of a clock. The air smells of cement and ambition. Posters along the tram route promise strength and renewal, each one brighter than the last. For stamina, for focus, for Japan's tomorrow. You see the words every morning and find comfort in them. It feels good to belong to something larger, even if that something no longer includes rest. At the factory, the noise has grown denser. The foreman raises quotas again, but you hardly notice. The pace feels natural now. The belt speeds up, your hands adjust, and the motion continues. Mistakes are rare, and when they happen, they feel abstract, errors made by another version of you, one that no longer exists. The foreman praises your consistency. Reliable, he calls you, his pen scratching a note beside your name. The word sounds clean, as if scrubbed of human complication. At lunch, you sit with your back to the wall, unwrapping food you no longer intend to eat. The rice has gone hard at the edges. You touch it once with your chopsticks, then close the lid again. The smell of pickled radish makes you dizzy, though not from hunger. Around you, others eat quickly, mechanically. One man complains of headaches, another laughs too loudly at something no one said. You listen without hearing. When the bell rings, you rise at once, grateful to return to the machines. In the evenings, you walk home slowly, not from fatigue but from habit. The tram feels crowded and airless, so you walk instead through narrow streets, slick with rain. The neon from shop signs ripples across puddles, turning the ground into a sheet of trembling colour. In one window, you see a display of Philippon, tins stacked like a small monument. the slogan printed cleanly across the top. You pause long enough to read it again, for clarity and strength. The clerk inside notices you and smiles, mistaking recognition for interest. You nod and continue walking. The dormitory feels colder these days, though the season hasn't changed. The stove in the corner burns low. The air carries a faint metallic chill. You sit on your futon, counting the coins in your pocket, realizing that you've spent almost nothing. Food, tobacco and sleep have all become luxuries you can afford to ignore. You take comfort in the simplicity of it. Less to think about, less to waste. The money saved will go home eventually, you tell yourself. Maybe next month, maybe when the factory closes for the holiday. You start to notice small things slipping. The toothbrush you meant to replace, the sleeve you never finished mending, the letter still sitting unsent. They feel insignificant at first, too minor to bother with. Then one morning you forget to shave before work and spend the whole day touching your chin, surprised by the roughness there. The next day, you forget again. The razor stays dry on the shelf. These omissions don't trouble you. They feel efficient, even wise. You tell yourself that time is better spent on what matters. When the factory bell rings, you're already waiting at your station. You used to arrive just as the whistle blew, but now you're early every morning, sometimes by an hour. You like the quiet before the noise begins. The machines stand in still rows, gleaming faintly under the dim light. You trace your hand along the cold metal and imagine the hum that will soon return. It feels like communion. You think of the old prayers, thankful, obedient, and realize you haven't spoken one aloud in months. The tablets, lined up in their drawer, feel holier somehow. The days narrow further. You no longer mark them by date or calendar, but by the number of parts completed, the number of doses taken. The spaces between actions have disappeared. When the line stops for maintenance, you stand still until it starts again, unsure what else to do. The quiet unnerves you. Your hands twitch without purpose, waiting for motion. At night, the other men still talk, though you rarely join them. Their laughter sounds distant, as though carried through another wall. You lie on your futon, staring at the ceiling, watching the shadows from the hallway lamp move slowly across the beams. Sleep doesn't come easily anymore, but the restlessness feels normal now, even productive. Lying awake feels like a kind of vigilance. You listen to the sounds of breathing around you, the small coughs, the sighs, and count them like minutes. Weeks pass like this, though you stop counting. Then one morning, you open your lunch tin and realize it's empty. You can't remember when you last filled it. The thought makes you smile faintly, though you're not sure why. You check your watch and find that you're early. Earlier than you've ever been. The street outside is still half dark, the tram yet to run. You stand for a moment, breathing in the cold air that smells faintly of smoke and iron. The stillness feels good. A notice appears on the board by the factory gate. New contracts, extended hours, additional pay for those willing to work through the night. The foreman reads it aloud at the end of the shift, his voice thin but proud. The words sound like opportunity, though you understand them for what they are. More work, more noise, more hours to fill. No one complains. Most of the men nod. The rest simply keep their eyes lowered. You nod too. That evening after supper you didn't eat. You return to the factory with the others. The building glows differently at night, its windows spilling pale light into the narrow street. The air outside carries the faint tang of rain and coal smoke, but inside it smells of oil, metal, and heat. The machines, usually allowed a few hours of rest, are already awake and humming. The sound is lower, heavier than the daytime rhythm, almost melodic. Someone jokes that the factory sings better after dark, but no one laughs long enough to prove it. You take your place at the line, sleeves rolled to the elbow. Your hands move automatically, but the body feels slower now, less certain. Fatigue has begun to creep in at the edges, though you refuse to name it. You open the drawer beneath your station. and find the familiar packet waiting. The tablets glint faintly under the fluorescent lights, chalk white, harmless. You take one, then another half, for good measure, swallowing them dry. The bitterness catches in your throat, but you barely flinch. Within minutes, the heaviness lifts. The air clears, the machines sharpen into focus, and the night begins to move with purpose. You work as if the body were a separate instrument, tuned for speed and precision. Around you, the other men settle into the same cadence. Heads bent, hands steady, faces expressionless. The factory hums like a mechanical choir, each note perfectly placed, perfectly hollow. Outside the high windows, the city glows under occupation. Neon signs shimmer in the damp air, the letters of English brands reflected in puddles along the street. From somewhere beyond the gate, you hear a burst of laughter. American voices, loud and unrestrained. The sound feels far away, irrelevant, like a broadcast from another planet. Inside, the only rhythm that matters is the one that keeps the machines alive. Hours lose their shape. The line keeps moving, and the light never changes. The heat grows thick, the air dense enough to taste. Sweat collects in your collar, then dries, leaving a faint crust of salt. You forget how many parts you've finished, how many bolts you've turned. The movements have become identical, indistinguishable, endless. The bell rings at intervals that no longer seem to correspond to time. You drink water once, then again, uncertain if both moments happen the same night. Sometime past midnight, the world narrows to the size of your hands. The hum of the machines folds into your pulse until you can't tell which drives which. When the second whistle sounds, a few men stretch, joints cracking like worn wood. One leans his head against the wall, eyes open, mouth slack. You keep working. Stopping feels harder than continuing. The rhythm holds you upright. It promises survival in exchange for obedience. By the time the last batch is finished, the room smells of oil and metal filings, of bodies that have forgotten to rest. The foreman claps once too sharply, announcing dawn. You hadn't realised the night was ending until he said it. The machines wind down, one by one, groaning into silence. The absence of sound is almost painful. You step outside with the others, into air that feels thinner than it should. The sky's grey, the streets wet from a night you didn't notice passing. A tram bell rings somewhere down the line. The light is too pale, too revealing. You blink, and your eyes water from the sudden brightness. The sun feels intrusive, like a question you haven't earned the right to answer. You stand there a moment longer, squinting against it, before turning toward the dormitory where the curtains will still be drawn, and the room will still be dark. By the next week, you really start to notice the physical changes in your body from the lack of food. At the wash basin, you splash water on your face, but the reflection in the mirror stops you. The skin around your mouth is dry and flaking. The lips split in narrow seams that sting when you smile. A faint sore has formed along your jawline, a small red mark that wasn't there last week. You touch it and feel the heat beneath it. A small fever in miniature. You tell yourself it's nothing, that everyone working long hours looks worse in the winter light. Still, the thought lingers as you reach for the tablet packet on the table. You take one before leaving, crushing it between your teeth to save time. The bitterness makes your tongue throb, but you swallow anyway. Outside, the tram screeches through the fog, its wheels throwing sparks against the rails. You ride in silence, shoulder to shoulder, with men who look more like shadows than passengers. Their eyes are dull, their faces expressionless, and yet you can't help thinking they all seem healthier than you. At the factory, the noise hits immediately, sharp, metallic, endless. The smell of oil hangs in the air like breath. You begin your shift, hands working by habit, but the motion feels wrong. The trembling starts earlier today, running through your wrists like a current. You drop a part, hear it strike the floor, and freeze for a second, before reaching down to retrieve it. The skin on your knuckles splits against the edge of the metal. A thin bead of blood appears, startling in its brightness. You wipe it away quickly and keep working. The foreman walks past once, then again, slower this time. You can feel his eyes on your back. He says nothing, but the silence feels heavier than words. When the whistle blows for break, you stay at your station, pretending to adjust a tool. The others move toward the door, laughing faintly, but you remain behind until the sound fades. Then you reach into your pocket, take another half tablet, and chew it dry. The trembling stops within minutes, replaced by that familiar, tight calm. Not relief, exactly, but a kind of precision. The day passes in flashes. You find yourself watching the machines more than the work, hypnotized by their rhythm. At times you forget what task you're performing, only that your body continues to move. You blink and realize you've completed an entire crate without memory of doing it. When the foreman stops beside you again, clipboard in hand, you can't read his expression. "Take a rest," he says softly. "You're pale." You want to answer, but the word snags somewhere between thought and mouth. He waits, then moves on. That evening, you notice new sores forming on your forearms, small, round, like burns. The skin around them is thin, bruised. You scratch one absently and watch a trace of yellow pus rise beneath the nail. It doesn't hurt as much as it should. You rinse the wound under cold water, then cover it with your sleeve. The smell of infection mixes faintly with the soap on your hands. You think of seeing a doctor, but the idea feels impractical. You've missed enough hours already. Sleep doesn't come. You lie awake, eyes wide, the darkness too full of sound. Every creak of the building feels amplified, deliberate. You can almost hear the factory from here, its belts and engines echoing faintly in the back of your skull. You try to close your eyes, but the rhythm continues, unbroken, mechanical. When dawn finally seeps through the shutters, you're already dressed, standing by the door with the tablet packet in hand. At work, you make it only halfway through the morning before another mistake. A bolt dropped, a screw stripped. The foreman calls you over. His tone is gentle but final. The company, he explains, is reorganizing. Fewer workers are needed. Your name, he says, is on the list. You bow, thank him, and hear yourself apologize for reasons you don't understand. The clipboard closes with a small click. That's the sound of it ending. You finish your shift anyway, sweeping the floor out of habit. The broom feels light, insubstantial in your grip. The sores on your hands sting with every motion. You tell yourself that if you just keep moving, the noise will come back, that the machines will start again, that someone will call you to return. They don't. The line keeps running, but you are already outside it. That evening, you walk without direction. The streets are slick from rain, the air thick with exhaust. Neon spills across puddles in fractured lines of red and blue. Your stomach twists, though not from hunger. You can't remember the last meal you finished. The thought of food feels abstract, unnecessary. The ribs show sharply beneath your shirt. The skin stretched and pale. You wonder, distantly, how much weight you've lost. The numbers don't come. The idea of counting anything seems absurd now. When you reach the dormitory, the other men are already eating. The smell of rice fills the narrow hall, mingled with the faint sweetness of pickles. The scent should comfort you, but it doesn't. You bow politely as you pass and head straight to your room. The envelope of wages from your final week sits unopened on the table. Beside it lies the small tin of tablets, the lid worn smooth from handling. It isn't long before you're asked to leave the dormitory, now that your job has let you go. The manager bows while he tells you, explaining that the beds are for current employees only. He thanks you for your service and reminds you to collect your belongings by evening. There isn't much to collect. 2 shirts, a towel, the tin box of wages you never opened, and the paper envelope with the last of your tablets. You fold everything into a small bundle and step into the street. The cold meets you like an old colleague, polite but merciless. You still have a few notes left from your final wages. They should last the month and let you eat even if you don't have a place to stay, but you know they won't. You tell yourself it's better to stay sharp. That hunger can wait until tomorrow. The money disappears 1 coin at a time across the counters of small pharmacies, each clerk wrapping the packet neatly and thanking you as though it's medicine. Soon you stop pretending it's a choice. Food feels wasteful anyway. The tablets are cheaper, cleaner, and keep you moving. The city has grown bright since you first arrived. New lights burn above the tram lines, and cranes crowd the skyline like patient birds. You watch men in heavy coats hurry towards shifts that once belonged to you. Their boots strike the pavement in rhythm, their breath a white chorus against the air. You could follow them easily enough, but no one would know what you were doing there. You walk south, past the factory gates. The sound of the machines reaches you even from the road, muted now, almost human in its fatigue. You pause, hand pressed against the fence, half expecting someone to call your name. No one does. When the whistle blows, it is only a sound, nothing more. By nightfall, you find a place beneath a bridge near the river. The concrete radiates the day's chill back into your bones. A thin film of frost coats the ground, glittering faintly under the streetlights. You unwrap one of your shirts and lay it beneath you, the other over your chest. It isn't enough, but it feels organised, which is close to comfort. Hunger gnaws at you gently, more memory than pain. You open the envelope, tip a tablet into your palm, and swallow it dry. The bitterness warms your throat for a moment, then fades. Days begin to slide past in a colourless blur. You spend your mornings wandering the streets near Ueno Station, watching the crowds hurry through the winter air. Soldiers in khaki patrol the intersections, their laughter carrying above the hum of engines. Vendors call out prices for roasted chestnuts and sweet potatoes, the smell thick and distant. You count the coins in your pocket until the last one disappears at the counter of a small pharmacy. The clerk wraps the new packet of tablets with the same efficiency as before, unaware or uninterested that you have no address to return to. At night, the city turns to glass. The neon hums, puddles freeze, and the alleys grow still. You find corners that block the wind for a few hours at a time. Sometimes, you wake before dawn, with your back against a wall, unable to remember how you came there. The sores on your hands have opened again, the skin raw and weeping through your gloves. Your breath rasps when you speak, though you rarely do. The tablets keep you awake, clear, detached. The hunger recedes until you forget what it feels like to be full. The voices begin softly, almost courteous. They whisper through the static of tram wires and the rattle of windows. Sometimes you hear the foreman calling your name from far away, or the steady chant of the factory line. Counting parts you can no longer see, you turn toward the sound, certain for a heartbeat that you're late for work, that the machines are waiting. Then the silence folds back over everything, and you realise you've been standing still for hours. Snow falls one night without warning. The flakes drift through the glow of a street lamp, settling over your coat, your hair, the bundle of clothes you keep beside you. You watch them melt against your skin and feel nothing. The city smells of coal and river water. Across the street, a billboard advertises Philipon for strength and vitality. The smiling worker in the picture holds a wrench toward a rising sun. You stare at him until the light behind the sign flickers out. The snow has hardened into ice. You move slowly now, your body lighter than you remember. The world tilts when you stand. You find your way back to the riverbank, where the frost clings to the stones like ash. The tablets in your pocket rattle softly. A few remain. You take one, letting it dissolve on your tongue. The bitterness is almost sweet this time, a familiar echo of motion. You sit down beneath the bridge, back against the cold wall, watching the smoke from the factories drift across the sky. Somewhere above, a train crosses, the sound rolling through the concrete like thunder trapped underground. You can feel your breath slowing. You're so weak and so cold, you know this is the end. You close your eyes and imagine the belt moving, the parts sliding into place, the rhythm steady and unbroken. Your chest rises one last time before falling still. The next morning, the city wakes as it always does. The trams spark along their wires, the factory whistles echo across the grey sky, and the smell of coal smoke settles over the river. Across the bridge, the market opens late, merchants stamping their feet to shake off the cold as they lift the shutters of their stalls. The air hums with movement again, as if the night had left nothing behind. Under the bridge, your body lies curled against the wall, half covered by a thin crust of ice. The snow has frozen into the folds of your coat, stiffening the fabric, sealing you to the ground. A pair of municipal workers find you as the light strengthens, their boots crunching through the frost. One of them crouches and brushes snow from your shoulder. The skin beneath is pale, already stiff with cold. A small tin rests beside your hand, open and empty, its contents washed away by the melt. They work quietly, as men who have done this before. One writes down the location, while the other drapes a canvas sheet over you. They do not linger. There are more bridges, more alleys, more corners of the city waiting to be cleared before noon. When the police arrive, the record is short. Male, approximate age, late 20s, no identification. Cause of death, exposure, malnutrition. The clerk at the ward office enters the report into a ledger, the ink feathering slightly where the paper is damp. Your name never comes up. A number will do. The city moves forward without hesitation. At the factory, the foreman stamps the morning attendance sheet. The machines roar to life again, the line filling with faces that have not yet learned exhaustion. A new worker stands where you once stood, his posture eager, his hands uncertain. The rhythm reasserts itself, steady, confident, indifferent. And that brings us to the end of tonight's story. Feel free to like, subscribe, or leave a comment with another forgotten corner of history you'd like explored next. If you'd like early access to more of these quiet descents into forgotten history, ad-free audio of the episodes, or just want to support the show, there's a link to the Patreon in the description. If you're listening on a podcast app, a rating or review helps more people find their way to these stories. And special thanks to the supporters who make this show possible, including our chroniclers, Andrew S. and Rich Davis. Sleep well.